Hello and welcome to this edition of Icon, and today I'll be talking to photographer Michael Yamashita at one of his exhibitions in Beijing, marking the epic journeys of Marco Polo and Zheng He, one from the west to the east and the other from the east to the west. So how did he decide the theme of his exhibition, and what are the stories behind all these pictures? Let's start the interview with a visit to his exhibition. Michael Yamashita is an award-winning photographer who has been contributing to National Geographic magazine for over 30 years. After graduating with a degree in Asian Studies, he spent 7 years in Asia, the region that he remained his specialty. Following his return to the US, he worked for National Geographic as well as several other American and international magazines and clients. He is known for his epic works, retracing the steps of famous travelers such as Marco Polo, the Japanese poet Basho, and the Chinese explorer Zheng He. By combining his dual passions of photography and travel, Yamashita has brought to life countless stunning, breathtaking, and inspirational photographs. So it's the epic journeys of one from the west to the east and the other from the east to the west. Marco Polo and Zheng He.
Yes.
What a theme.
Well, it was my good fortune to, especially as a traveler for the Geographic, who is also a mix between east and west.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
I would get the chance to follow these two, greatest explorers maybe in the world.
So what was the span of time like, when you took all these pictures?
I guess about 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, I took 2 years to do the Marco Polo route.
Right.
Went through at least a dozen countries. We actually did 2 documentary films on these two
films
guys.
too, along with these pictures.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. So these, on this side, will be pictures taken mostly in no, this is not it. Is
no,
it in China
most of these are from Southeast Asia.
Okay.
So this from Jakarta.
Right.
These would be Zheng He pictures.
Zheng He picture, exactly.
Yeah, in that he followed the Sea Silk Road. So
right.
The way this is organized is the land pictures are photographs that I would have taken following Marco Polo going from Venice to China, going through Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan.
So that's the Marco Polo side?
Yes.
Along the Central Asia and...
Well, let's see. After Afghanistan. I crossed into Xinjiang, and that would be Karakuli Lake. And then, of course, Marco was going to Shandong, which is the Xanadu, or the summer palace of Kublai Khan, and anyway, so this is a lot of the things I saw on the land Silk Road, the one belt of the Old Boer One Belt One Road.
It's interesting because along the route, and there are so many things you can take pictures of, and so many stories you can follow. But how did you decide what to follow?
Well, actually, that's pretty easy because my job is to recreate these trips. So in the case of Marco Polo, I read his book. Yeah.
You have to do research too.
Absolutely. And I make a shoot list of what he wrote about.
You did?
Yeah. So in this case, of course, we were trying to prove whether Marco Polo
did come to China or not.
Yes. As most geographic stories, they start with a question, and this one was...
So your conclusion was?
Absolutely. He made it to China. Yeah, he was too accurate and too detailed to have written it as a bystander, say, in Istanbul, as some people believe that he actually interviewed people who traveled the Silk Road. But no question in my mind, if I have any legacy at all, for me, what I have photographed here are all these scenes of a time that no longer exists.
True.
You can't see these photographs, and my job at the time was to find situations that would put the reader into the 13th century as far as Marco, or the 15th century as far as Zheng He.
Yeah, literally you've been recording history, because some of the scenes, they're gone forever.
Yeah, and I would say almost every one of these scenes would be very hard to photograph today. I have a picture of Beijing here, which is
the Forbidden City? No?
Not so easy to take, because how many times do you ever see snow here? So, and I arrived and I was like very jet lagged, so at 4 a.m. in the morning I just happened to, boom, be awake. I looked out the hotel window, it was snowing.
Wow.
Hopped in a taxi, went here, ran up the steps of Cole Hill and shot this picture. Well, in this particular case, I have to say Zheng He and Marco Polo kind of put me on the map, and especially with Obor as it is now. Everybody's, you know, focused on Silk Road, and so these pictures have sort of come to life again.
And now we have this Belt and Road Initiative, and this comes in the right time.
Right. Timing was just perfect for me.
Yeah. Let's go and take a seat and let's talk about your career.
Good.
So that's the Belt and Road and Silk Road theme.
Yes.
So how does it work? I mean, do you come up with a theme first, or do you just go out, take pictures, and find a theme for an exhibition?
So first of all, I've had a long career at National Geographic, and usually the stories are based on photographer proposals. So it was my idea to do Marco Polo, and you know, greatest overland traveler, and so, you know, I spent 2 years on that, and we ended up doing a documentary.
It's all about stories.
Well, I'm a storyteller. I'm not, it's not like I'm wandering around looking for a picture.
Yeah.
I'm going to a place to tell a story. And
Through the pictures.
Through the pictures, and having done the research, I know what I'm going to find there. So I'm going specifically to Yemen because Zheng He was there, and I'm going to make a picture that, in this case, kind of evokes what it was like to be there in the 15th century when he was there.
A very important page of your career is that you spend a lot of time in China.
Correct.
Back as early as in early 1980s.
Yeah. First trip I ever made, I made to China was in '82.
1982?
Yeah.
That was a different China at the time.
Totally different. I was invited by the government to, on one of the first trips by any foreign journalist, by any foreign photographer. Everybody was wearing blue or green and...
or gray.
Yeah, well, I don't remember gray so much. Being a color photographer, I probably concentrated on blue and green. But anyway, they were, it was just an amazing time to be there, and also amazing for my subjects who had never seen a foreigner, and especially since they look Asian. Maybe they thought it was even stranger to have this guy with 2 or 3 cameras snapping so many pictures.
Yeah, so at the time, China was just opening up.
Correct.
You know, to the outside world.
Yeah.
So when you said you had to do research about what you're going to, you know, photograph.
Yeah.
So what did you know about China at the time?
Well, I studied Asian history, so I knew something about Chinese history. And this trip was to Jiangsu.
Jiangsu.
Yeah, so I started in Nanjing, and then, you know, went to Hangzhou, Suzhou, in that area.
What was most intriguing to you?
Oh gosh, well, you know, the curiosity of the people, for one thing. So you'd be surrounded by whoever you were shooting. In fact, it was very hard to be sort of a fly on the wall, travel incognito, because, which is what I like to be. I like to be able to shoot and be an observer, but in this case, you know, you were always kind of stood out.
So in those days, you didn't really, it was also new, totally new to you. You didn't expect to see these things.
No, so much of what I was seeing was completely new, and therefore that's what kept bringing me back again and again as I learned more about China and was doing stories and making pictures. My best luck was I happened to be in China in its more formative time, and yet been able to see it from 82 and 86, and then following it mainly through the 90s when I was there that time coming regularly, and then through 2000 and to the present. And, you know, I've kind of seen it grow up from very humble beginnings to world power.
If you look back at those journeys, the working trips in China every 3 or 4 years, what impressed you the most?
Well, you know, again, there's this flood of, you can't help but think that you are recording history, which you are, because so many of the things I would photograph in 1 year, you'd come back and there'd be
gone and different.
Yeah, huge changes, and if any, that would be the major takeaway is nothing stands still. And in the case of China, it was such an incredible acceleration of how things indeed changed here.
And people?
People always say, you know, if anything, the people in the inside has not changed.
What do you mean by from the inside?
Well, I think people are generally curious and welcoming, and that's always been the case as far as me working in China. Rarely have, I would have a lot more problem shooting in my hometown. There is a kind of a photographers, you know, why are you shooting my picture? But rarely do you find people saying that here.
So that's out of privacy concerns.
Yeah, and of course now it's even harder because people are concerned about, you know, terrorism or whatever, privacy issues. Yes, but you can't just freely shoot anywhere, at least in New Jersey where I live. You know, when I first read about Zheng He last year, I was totally intrigued. How is it that I had ever heard of this guy before? He sailed 40,000 miles across the South China Seas and the Indian Ocean decades before Columbus and Vasco da Gama had made it to the coast of Africa. The only way I can truly understand these great voyages is to make them myself and get a taste of the worlds that Zheng He and his crews must have experienced 600 years ago.
Starting from 1982 till now, you come back on and off to China taking pictures, and you've seen all the changes and transformation happening in China. So let me ask you this. I mean, do you prefer to take pictures then, or do you prefer to take pictures now? Oh, God. Well, I am very thankful that in this long career, starting in '82 here, I've seen, and not just China, I've seen the world in kind of the reality of the world as opposed to the Disneyfication that you're seeing now with tourism going totally rampant, where everywhere is Disneyland. It's turned into a tourist photo op. And you know, I was very privileged, now that I look back, to have seen things before that happened. Like Angkor Wat is such a perfect example, which is a place that when I saw it, there was nobody there. In fact, it was dangerous because the Khmer Rouge had just left, and so, you know, I was seeing it for the first time with
you know, without a war going on. I was there in, I think it was '89, and you know, there were still guards inside the temples, but there was no tourists. So I saw it in its pristine state, and now if you go there to take the famous sunrise, there'll be a sea of tripods and 100 tourists already there waiting to take the perfect picture.
Yeah.
But the great thing is, I already took that picture. The great thing about working for the Geographic is you could shoot as much as you wanted.
Yeah.
So I had, you know, no limit on film, and I shot a lot. But now, of course, digital.
No limit.
Yeah, digital is no limit, and people, and myself included, shoot even that much more. So, you know, on a story like Marco Polo, maybe I shot 1,000 rolls. Of course, spread over 2 years, that's not such a huge amount of film, but you think about how many frames I would be shooting digitally. Click, 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 it's all for free.
As all these changes, I mean, tremendous changes happening in China, the rest of the world, people, and also on technology.
Yes.
So how have they been changing or influencing your way of photography?
Oh, God, it's so much easier now. Digital.
Technology.
Yeah, technology has made the process much simpler. So, you know, you had to know nuances of film, and of course, you were limited by your, you know, the ISO of your film, the film sensitivity. So there were so many occasions where you know, needed to put artificial light into the picture, and now these amazing cameras have huge dynamic range. You can shoot, you know, practically in the dark because they have such great light sensitivity. It's that much easier, and that's why there's so, oh God, so much easier. And that's why there's so many photographers, and that's why all those tourist areas are so filled up with people shooting.
Well, I take pictures, but I know I'm not a photographer.
Right.
But I can rely on PS technology to work
Point
on the,
and shoot. Yeah.
to fine-tune some, you know, the pictures that I took to make it look better.
Yeah.
Do you think this is basically changing
Photoshop.
photography?
Yes, it is, and I never learned Photoshop, and I've never cared to, because first of all, I don't want to spend any time extra at a computer more than I do already with, you know, email and all of that stuff. So when it comes to, you know, shooting and then having to process, I still am a film guy at heart. I don't even look at the back of the screen to see what I shot, which is what most amateurs do. And, you know, you have that preview screen, so you can, and so they're shooting like this, and in so doing, I always tell my students, well, if you're looking at the back screen, you missed the picture in front of you. You know, if you already got the picture, if it's, you click the shutter, it's in the camera, so why do you need to look at it? You know, you may check the first frame just to make sure your exposure's right, but after that, your job is to follow the subject.
Do you call this old-fashioned, or do you call this real photography?
That's the real thing. You're there to make a great picture. It's all about the moment. So to catch the moment, you've got to be able to see it, and at the right time, click that shutter.
What does it take to be that, you know, photographer who catches the right moment?
Well, it's you know, this is a tough profession. It's always been 1% or 1% that's ever going to make it as a professional. And your experience, of course, and your vision is what counts. The technology, as I say, is so easy that you know, everything's automatic. Your exposures and your focus, and what used to be all manual is now everything is point and shoot.
So you're not against the part that technology is helping you do what you normally had to do manually, but you don't like the idea of processing the pictures after it's taken?
Well, I don't do it because it certainly, at least in my days with the Geographic, that was forbidden. You don't Photoshop. Your job is to show what's real, and you know, doctoring your picture is something you cannot do as a photojournalist. Your job is to shoot real things in real time. So
you stick to that principle.
Still, I do, and I don't think a set-up picture is worth half as much as the real thing, where you've captured some real elusive moment.
Well, this is Nanjing, the capital of the Ming Dynasty, and it was from here that Zheng He made his early expedition.
The treasure fleet has made 6 legendary voyages, forged diplomatic relations with dozens of rulers and kings, made an encyclopedic study across 10,000 miles of ocean in 67 overseas states.
I'm at Pepper Go Down in Calicut, and this is the reason why Zheng He stopped here on all of his voyages. He was coming to buy the black gold, pepper.
Now let me ask you this. You're a professional photographer, photojournalist, using professional cameras. Do you take pictures with phones as well?
I do.
You do?
And the phones are so amazing today that, well, the way the saying goes is, the best camera is the one in your hands. And so what's the one that's most likely when you run into a situation?
You carry a phone all the way, all around.
Absolutely. The reason I'm not carrying my phone now is I thought it might go off while we're having this interview. But normally, yeah, it's right here in my pocket, and so if I see anything that I want to take a picture of, it's always there, even if I don't have this camera around my...
Over all these years, I guess at the time when you took the pictures about China, when you came to travel in China and took all those pictures, that could be also a window for foreigners to know about China at the time.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why they send me over here. They want me to tell a story about what's going on. And again, my subject is almost always culture or history. I don't shoot politics, I don't shoot war, I don't shoot news. So my stories are all about how people live.
So somehow maybe a picture, because it's worth 1,000 words, and
I do believe that.
All those pictures that you took, the ones that got to be seen by the readers of National Geographic, I guess somehow you changed their perceptions too about China.
Oh yeah, and I have done more stories on China than any of my colleagues.
You also write?
No, well, I do for my own books.
Yeah.
I have more books than any photographer on China, maybe even more than most Chinese, well, a lot of Chinese photographers. And I was here in a time when, through access working mainly for the Geographic, I got to travel freely, and again I had color film. So I not only got a very good glimpse of China, of course, from a foreigner's point of view, but I had unlimited film and I don't want to say unlimited access, but you know, stories I covered, certainly I got definitive coverage in that I just shot a lot and spent as much time as I could on whatever the story was.
After being a photographer for all these years for your career, how do you see this profession? Is it an easy job?
I think it's dying.
It's dying?
Yeah. There's always a need for good pictures. will always be a need for photographers, professional photographers. It's never been easier for you to show your work because of the internet. But as far as making a living at this, nobody's willing to pay for it. Why should they when there's a billion photographers out there adding new stuff every day, which you can see on the internet? So to actually make a living shooting, doing photography has become, and it was difficult in my day, but I would say, you know, it's something I would never tell my kid to get into as a career. It's that difficult, and I think very impossible to make it as a photographer.
Your own story, I mean, do you still remember that one day, you know, you've decided, okay, yeah, this is something I'm going to do in my life as a career?
I do, and I was a very avid amateur. I was living in Japan. I got out of college and did what we call a roots trip. I grew up in America, thinking like an American, looking like a Japanese. Studied Asian history. Certainly I felt some prejudice as an Asian face in a white man's world. And so I wanted to see what my Asian roots were. So I went to Japan, and that's when I bought a camera. And what do you do with a camera? Well, you take pictures to show your mom and dad and your friends back in the States what you're doing and what you're seeing. And that's the beginning for me, and that's the beginning for most everybody, is that need to record and just share with an audience. And the first audience for me is family and friends. And I just got hooked into photography, and I spent 2-3 years of really honing my skills and just loving doing it. It was a labor of love.
So if you look back, and what do you think is the most rewarding part to be a photographer?
Just recognition, especially among my colleagues and peers, to be recognized as, and basically people liking your photographs. Yeah, it's and because of this now direct connection that you get because of the internet, you have people interacting with
the likes, the number of likes.
Yeah, but more than the likes are the comments.
Yeah,
you know, you get to see what people see in your picture, and that is very gratifying.
So in the end, you're a storyteller.
Yeah.
Through photography.
Right, and yeah, that's the way I would describe myself. That's what my photography is all about. I'm not illustrating, I'm not doing fashion, I'm not trying to make something look good like a car or something.
No setups.
No setups.
That's the bottom line. Okay, thank you very much, Michael. I look forward to see more pictures from your new project.
Thank you very much.